There is no escaping the truth that technology is affecting our lives more and more with each passing day. When one considers the astounding advance of the internet, mass communications, and social media, what is happening in our midst is truly beyond the wildest dreams of yesterday's science fiction. But it's happening at a cost. Whether a dream or nightmare, the fact remains that new tech is affecting, even shaping the culture across the planet in an unparalleled manner. Our lives and homes are under a sort of invasion, and what many do not perceive is that with these advancements, man is speeding ever faster toward the ultimate showdown, where technology will be at the very heart of the confrontation that is to come. In fact, technology could indeed be the linchpin that seals the fate of our fallen world. Though neutral in itself, it can and will be a tool that the enemy uses against mankind, in particular God's people. However, today's technologies can also be a powerful means by which to deliver the gospel message as we speed toward the close of time. These are indeed troubling days, perilous times, and we servants of Jehovah God need great wisdom and understanding. Technology is here, and there's no turning back. What then shall we do?
Will the wonder of technology mean the end of our privacy? Shatter our security? Will today's advancements spell the end for humanity? And become the key to world domination? Eric Barger and Take a Stand Ministries presents Home Invasion. The rise of surveillance society. Now, here's Eric Barger.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for this presentation, Home Invasion, The Rise of Surveillance Society. This is a video about technology in the 21st century. It is also a video concerning Bible prophecy, as we'll look at many various aspects of the world around us in coordination with Scripture. Over the past 16 months of research and preparation, I have personally spent hundreds of hours searching and reading, watching, learning, praying, of course, and then dissecting and preparing the material that appears in this project. In the process, I can tell you that literally every day, one or more stories or events have caught my attention that could possibly fit the parameters that I set for the material that will be presented here. There are 4 primary points that I'll be bringing up throughout the presentation. They'll come up sometimes together, 1, 2, or 3, or maybe even 4 of them all together, or they'll be mentioned individually. And I'm not going to necessarily announce that this is now what we're talking about, but you'll see these things come up during the presentation. The very first thing is our security. Of course, our national security and our personal security, our financial security, the security of our loved ones. This will be one of the things that will be mentioned quite a bit during the presentation. Besides our security and our safety, the next thing is our personal privacy. Along with the tremendous technology that's available to us today has come an erosion of our privacy. I sense that the generations coming up in this electronic age are not as aware about or appreciative of the standard of privacy as many who have come before them. Since our beginnings, privacy and autonomy have been a treasured part of the American fabric, our way of life. These standards of freedom have dissipated dramatically in just the past 10 or 15 years. But the question remains, can we ever return to a place where our personal privacy is secure again? The third point is our free speech. And with our own diminishing freedom of expression comes the limiting or silencing of the free speech of others. Untold thousands, even millions before us gave their lives so that we could experience, along with other elements, freedom of speech, speech expressing what the majority may well disdain. But regardless of its content, this freedom for all is a core value that was cherished by our founding fathers and rooted in our First Amendment. Now, however, open discussion and debate on many controversial topics has been silenced if the issue in question is arbitrarily deemed to be politically incorrect. Popular majority rule is now the barometer deciding who is even allowed to speak and what they can then express. Thus, we the people are being slowly deprived of all the facts and input needed to understand events and politics and worldviews in a culture morphing and changing at light speed. If there is any signal that our nation is in a place of jeopardy, it is that our freedom of speech is now determined by the mob. Concerning this point today, the tech masters who hold enormous sway and control in determining who will be heard and who won't should be noticed. That cannot be overstated. We'll examine who these people are, what they stand for, and what they have already determined that they want to accomplish. You will see that there is a handful of very elite people who wield tremendous influence about what is known and what is not by the general public. To say that they have a bias is to understate the facts. And I'm concerned and convinced that there's a central issue and agenda that courses throughout big tech, and it's most disturbing. If and when the agenda of the tech masters reaches critical mass is still yet to be seen, but it will certainly be the fact that we are silent if it does take place. Unless we the people become equipped and aware and begin to speak up with one voice, it will indeed succeed. One of the primary objectives of this video is to allow the facts that relatively few people understand to be known by all. This material could be very disturbing to some who will see it. But please understand that my objective is not to frighten or scare the viewers. And though I am not against technology itself, for I use a lot of it, I have become more disturbed with each passing day and every subsequent news story, and I simply can't hold back the passion I feel and my concern. The technology of today is amazing and can indeed be a valuable tool, but some watching will just not want to believe how some technology is being used, not for our good, but instead nefariously to our detriment. This is one reason that I have included here a tremendous amount of clips and quotes and source material that verifies and validates my findings. Some will still say, or they will call me a radical or a fanatic, and others will just not like my conclusions and decide that they'll choose to discount or completely ignore my findings. I understand. And of course, that is up to the judgment and the prerogative of each viewer. All I ask is that you seek for yourself and see if the documentation that I present holds water. If you cherish our privacy, our liberty, security, free speech, and your own personal expression, there is certainly reason for alarm. But that is not the only concern. To accept the information as valid is only part of what is on my heart. I cannot encourage and stress enough that as you watch the video, that the viewer continually hold the material up against the prism of Bible prophecy. God's inspired word will help us decipher and determine how we should view and then respond to the presentation. To the Christian, though it may be distressing in the natural, I hope this material inspires you with a sense of urgency concerning the lost and compels us to work as if there were no tomorrow. That should be the ethic of God's remnant church as we march deeper into the end days. I mentioned that we'd be covering 4 primary points a few minutes ago, and here's number 4. For Christians, technology in our times can be a tremendous benefit, a tremendous boon in presenting the gospel. However, what if it also presents a detriment to our ability to spread the gospel here in the end of this age? During Home Invasion, I'll be discussing and explaining how that very fact may already be taking place and what I perceive the days ahead may hold. We were left here on the planet with one mission: to declare the gospel of Jesus Christ. As the curtain begins to come down on the last act for this world, the most important and compelling concern that Home Invasion speaks to is this: how technology can be used for our benefit to help spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. However, conversely, if we are caught unaware, how technology could hamper or even stop us from fulfilling our common biblical mission. God is in ultimate control, but we need to be wise, for souls hang in the balance. So with that as an introduction, again, I want to thank you for watching. And now I want to go to a clip from the message I gave on this topic at Jan Markell's Understanding the Times Conference in Minnesota, September 29, 2018. Let's watch. Because for us, it would be our ability to continue to spread the gospel unabated around the world. For us to be able to do it in our country or in our state or city or in our community. How do we do that? And how can we continue to do that? As we all know, whether we like it or not, the internet is a way that people communicate like has never been in the history of the world. We have a great tool with us, as bad as it can be, and as bad as many things that are available there that are not good, we can spread the gospel with it. For us to simply say, well, I'm not going to use it because we have the pornographers using it or we have the terrorists using it or something, we're forgetting that how many people we're deciding just to relegate them to the pit of hell because we decided we can't touch them. Because many people, that is their communication link. And it is the way people are being found out. It is the way businesses are finding good leaders. It is the way that people are being hired, etc. So this technology can be used to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's not technology that I have a problem with. It is the way it's being used and will be used, and I think we need to understand it to be able to talk to others effectively about these things. There's no escaping the fact that technology is affecting the lives of every one of us more and more, literally each day. And just because we don't like it or understand it, or because we say I don't use much technology, or we think we don't use any at all, that doesn't change the fact that technology is affecting our lives and our mission as laid out to us in Matthew 28, as Jesus told us to go into all the world and preach the gospel. And I want to remind you that above all things, no matter what you take away from this conference or how depressing some of it might be, that God sees and knows and understands, and He is in control, and He understands the events. These are the perilous days, the troubling times Paul talked about at the end. And if we're in that time, then we should understand that Jesus is coming soon and our mission should be ramped up. Now, you've heard that all day. I heard that from Jack this morning, and I've heard it now from Billy. And I tell you, I didn't hear all of what Amir said, but he probably said it too. We all feel the same way. This is the day to act, not the day to lay back and say, well, you know, maybe as God lays on my heart to do something. This is a time to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And some of us are aware of the security and privacy and free speech areas and what's going on there, and maybe you've heard some of this before, but some of this I didn't know till I began to research, and I can tell you that I feel like I'm pretty well read on these issues, and I'm watching news in some form, not necessarily watching it on TV, but I'm tapped into the news a lot because of what I do. But I can tell you that we're not the first people that have had our privacy encroached upon in an unscrupulous manner. You think about it's happened all through mankind's history, but if you go back to Daniel chapter 6, you can see it live and in person in a great man, a Bible character that we've all read and heard of, because there were these people, the presidents and the prime ministers, that stood outside Daniel's window to see if he would go against the king's order, and he would pray. And as Daniel opened his windows and faced toward Jerusalem, which was the custom, and he prayed, and they heard him, and they went back to the king, and because of that, Daniel was thrown in the lion's den. We all know the story. We've heard it since we were little kids. So we're not the first people, that others have listened in on what we were saying, even in a private conversation to God. and how people would like to use that then against us. So long ago in Babylon, Daniel faced some of the same things we're facing with a whole lot less technology than we're facing it with today, granted. You know, when I first heard about the NSA and the facts had come out that the NSA had been spying on American citizens, I was incensed, and you probably were too. And most of you saw that news story back 3 years ago in 2015. I remember how I felt about it. And I thought my personal privacy is at stake. And then it was sometime in that period that I really remembered Daniel, and I got onto that and began to write a little bit about it and think about the fact that the very same thing that Daniel faced then is really what we're seeing today. So, you know, you can go through the internet and you can search the internet. A simple search will tell you there's lots of articles and lots of things that have been written that have surveillance society attached to them. That's why I believed it was a great title for what I was going to talk about here. The writer here in this piece in Time magazine said that really that the idea of surveillance is really a pipe dream, that we really don't have our privacy if surveillance is out there like it is. He said it's an illusion of privacy. It gives us room to be fully human, that illusion that we have a private life. And we can share intimacies, we can risk making mistakes, but all the while the line between private and public space is porous as tissue paper. And boy, it sure is, especially if we're online. Now, it'd be easy to say, well, that means I shouldn't be online. Let me unplug everything. I'm not going to be online. And then we miss the opportunity to be able to use that medium as a way to spread the gospel. That's why I'm not going to unplug. No matter what I am showing you here, I'm going to just be more frugal. I'm more understanding. And I'm going to be wise about it. And I think that's the key of where I'd like to go with this. So no matter how much you know or don't know about all that's happening around us, I hope you understand that I personally am convinced that though there's a problem, there's also a way for you and I to use the technology that we have. Now, the way this started for me, I told the story in the little interview that Jan and I did yesterday that I saw was played in here once today, and it'll be on the DVDs as well as all the interviews of the speakers will be. And the way I got into this was, it was last year. I took a picture of one of my board members at a conference up in Canada, and I didn't think much about it. I didn't email it to anybody. I just showed it to him. We had a chuckle about it and went on our business. A couple weeks later, I got the picture sent back to me by Google saying, "See, we're keeping your pictures for you. Isn't that nice?" Now, I realize that in the user agreement that most of us never take the time to read, and I'll talk about that in a second, that it does give them the right to do this, but I just began to go, man, it's real to me now because they have sent a picture back to me. Now, you can go through my phone. Any of us could talk about it. We could look at the stuff. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing there that I'd be ashamed of. That's not the issue. The point is, that's my property, but I've given them the right to do it. And because they sent that back to me, I got on a mission because I'd heard some things, and I really thought it was kind of on the edge of conspiracy theories, and I know conspiracies exist, but sometimes the theory is way bigger than the actual conspiracy. And then I really found out what I'd been reading wasn't just something that looked like it was greater and bigger than life and couldn't be true. You know, it wasn't long after that I took a picture of myself up on Blewett Pass, Washington. I don't take selfies very often, but it was a gorgeous day after a snow the night before, and I decided I'd send that picture to my wife and to my daughters and granddaughters, and just to say hello to them, that, hey, I'm up on Blewett Pass, it's a nice day, and don't worry about me, I'll be home in a little bit, I'll be back in the Seattle area. So I took that picture, and lo and behold, Google sent it back to me too a couple of weeks later. And this has happened again and again and again ever since that first time. And I've recognized that whatever pictures I take, including the ones I took back there today earlier as Jan was here, and I took it with the same camera that I had up on Blewett Pass that day with the cracked screen. Anyway, I took the picture back there. It could very well come back to me too, the same way, because somebody is sending that picture back. Now, I know that somebody isn't a person with a headset on and in a very nefarious manner. It's the algorithms of Google and how they're set up. But I recognize that that picture is out there somewhere. And once it's out for good. That's the point. How often we have warned our grandchildren, don't put anything online that you'd ever be embarrassed for somebody to see. And the same thing is true for anything that we put out online. It's out there. So since then, I've been consumed with this research, getting into it, and it's really been our inattention to detail, many of us, that have gotten us to this place where now we're shocked when, in the last few weeks and months, that some of this material has come out. And we begin to realize that there are people in the tech companies, usually that are so extremely far left-leaning you can hardly believe it, who are really controlling some of this stuff. And we've given them access to our privacy. And most of us have one of these in our phones, or in our hands, or in our possession anyway. How few people take time to read the user agreement that we see either online as we download something, or as we buy a new phone in a store, or as we even download an app to use on our phone with all the different apps that are so convenient to use, whether it's software or actual hardware, whatever it is. And we surrender and we agree to the user agreements and surrender our rights along with it. And we give them the rights to look at all the different facets of our phones, our texts, our pictures. They have access to our cameras. They have access to the microphone on our phones. They have access to our contact list, our phone list, who we called and when we called them, our location, where we are at all times. All of that is out there in the ether for the extreme, most left-wing people you can ever imagine, who are in control of the tech companies and their algorithms, which is a big word for the way computers process information. But we're not the first people that have failed to read some of the user agreements, as you'll see here. Now, Adam and Eve, the first people to not read the Apple terms and conditions. I don't know where I got that or who sent it to me. That's something Doc Reagan would probably put up on his screen too. But I thought that was good. That may be the last time you laugh during this message, so I'll just move on. Now, let me ask you, and I'm not asking you to raise your hand or to call out, but just think about it. Have you ever searched for a product or a service and then immediately begun to see ads appear in your web browser or your phone or your tablet or PC? I think we've all had that happen, and we've wondered, what's going on here? I search for something, and all of a sudden, I'm getting ads for it. Well, that's because Google and other companies, especially Google, considering that they control nearly 90% of the searches on the internet in the world. Nearly 90%. That's because they want to advertise to you because they want to sell products and they want their bottom line to increase. Well, Google isn't quite rich enough. They're only richer than 170 nations in the world, the GDP of 170 nations in the world. That's how big Google is. And that's a problem in itself. Not that you make money. I think that's not the issue, but the idea that these things can happen. Now, notice here this Google search I did, and I searched for, I believe it was for Olive Tree Ministries. Yes, it was. It was. And I knew that after I searched for Olive Tree Ministries, like I didn't already know the address, but I did a simple search for it, I knew that there was no way that any kind of advertising was going to pop up on my screen from them, because there is no user agreement, as far as I know anyway, between Jan and Google or anybody else to do advertising like this, and there isn't for me either. So if you search for me online or Olive Tree, you're not going to immediately get all kinds of advertising sent to you. But a lot of companies, this is a big business. It's a big business in advertising. It's certainly a big business with Google as the go-between, and some of the other companies too, and it's certainly a big business with many who want to sell products. So when you receive such an ad as I'm describing here, it happens because the pre-programmed algorithms of Google or Yahoo or others are set to pick up on a particular word in the search, so that advertisers they have agreements with can then send you advertising. The same thing happens with the apps we have on our phone. How many of you are aware what I'm talking about when I say an app on your phone? Would you? Okay, so a lot of us understand what that is. That is a small piece of software downloaded to our phone that gives us something, such as driving instructions, or today's weather, or sports scores, or a myriad of other things. So it's those companies, along with Google as the middleman, And they call this, of course, remarketing in the tech world, and it comes, in our computers anyway, with cookies, which are bits of data, I'm making this as simple as I can, that are deposited into our computers so that they know from that particular computer someone searched for that particular word or service or item or whatever it was that was looked for, and thus they try to match up advertisers with people at that computer and send it right back to us on our web browser, and it could happen also through emails and through texts and so on as well. So an algorithm by definition is just the basic technique used by computer programs to actually accomplish a task, okay? Data mining, as it's called, is big business, and I think most of us are aware of this. There have been reports in the national news about it, and they don't always get it right, as we know. Can I hear an amen? But have you ever wondered, when you download a game or an app to your phone or to your tablet, why you have to agree to give up your location, your contact list, the use of your camera or microphone? When you look at the app that you want to download, you wonder, why would they want access to my camera or microphone? What's going on? But you have to, of course, agree to that or the app doesn't work. And what's going on here is the people who build the wonderful, sometimes very ingenious, free apps that we download onto our phones and tablets, they're not doing it for nothing. They're selling the data that they garner, that they harvest from us through those apps back to the advertising community, usually through Google. Google owns the Android operating system. Now, I'm not saying that Apple is pristine, that's for sure. They were caught selling people user information in the past, even though they've tried to act like it didn't exist. But Android is some 86% of the telephones in the world. It's shocking to me what's going on, but what is really happening is when we buy a phone and we get a free app, we become the target of the advertising because they want to know all about us. They want to know how to do it. It's all about marketing, baby. It's all about marketing. However, the tech companies are doing this remarketing. It's happening to consumers on a new level, with both Android and iPhone users alike reporting that just in the presence of the software, just with the phone in my hand, suddenly I'm getting advertising sent to me. I know of a couple of instances personally about this. I'll give you an example. Friends are standing in a group, their phones in their hands, none of them actively making phone calls or doing a search. They're talking about where they're going to go to dinner. One of them says, let's go to Mexican. Somebody else says, that sounds like a great idea. I haven't had Mexican in a while. And all of a sudden, there it is on their phone, an advertisement for a Mexican restaurant. And not the closest one to them. It was one that had an advertising agreement with Google. That whenever Mexican restaurants were searched for or were heard by the Google algorithms, that they would have the right to advertise to those people. And of course, that's the way they make sales. I'll give you an example from my granddaughter. She told me about this last week. My second granddaughter, Casey, she and her husband, Cameron, they were discussing what the best kind of pizza was. And he said to her, it's Chicago-style pizza. He's from New York. Why he said that, I'm not sure, but not to talk to him about that. And within seconds, in Casey's Instagram app, an ad came up for Chicago-style pizza with pictures. They didn't ask for that search. Neither of them had their phones with the intent of searching or looking for something on it. They didn't do that. This happened because the microphone on the telephone itself picked it up. That's why we have to check off that we give right to our contact list, our location, our camera, our microphone. This is called eavesdropping in the old days. And that's really what it comes down to. Okay, we're back here in the Take a Stand TV studio from the clip, which was from the Understanding the Times Conference 2018. And next I want to just expand on what Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica scandal is all about. And I mentioned it in the message and talked about it at the conference, but this scandal has really been the tip of the spear concerning the data privacy issue that we've seen that's become really a major news story. It all broke in spring of 2018. And as the public is painfully becoming aware of, our personal privacy and our data has been at risk for some time. And because of the recent scrutiny, Facebook has divulged some very unsettling information that we found out. Facebook hasn't only been mining your personal data, but it's actually been keeping all of your call and text records as well. You've been watching some of the forthcoming documentary that we put together or are putting together called Home Invasion: The Rise of Surveillance Society. But time is running out, and I'm breaking in here to give you a couple of points as we look to begin to wrap up the session. You've been hearing a little about the shenanigans that have gone on at Facebook, and they just continue, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar company. What about Google? What does Google know about you and I? According to Dylan Curran, who is someone working in the tech industry from Northern Ireland, Google stores an immense amount of information on every user. And by the way, they keep it in duplicate on their servers, which are literally all over the world. Now, I don't expect you to get out a magnifying glass to try to read these, so I'm going to show you each one of these individually. But Dylan Curran, he tweeted each of these topics, and that's how we found out about it. It was on several of the blogs around the internet, and found it on one of those, and then actually ran down his tweet. So let's see what Google has on us. What do they know about you? Well, location is the first thing. Your location is logged every time you turn your phone on, and it does so from the first time that you turn it on, from the beginning of using the Android system software. Your location history only appears in your personal files that are accessible to Google users if the location setting was turned on your phone. However, we know for a fact that Google knows where you are regardless. And if I have time, I will show you how I know that, but it's in the documentary. Next is everywhere you've been. If they have your location, they know where you've been, including where you traveled to, how you traveled, what day, what time, how long it took to get from your last location. They know all about your travels. Next, search and phone history. The only way to delete this information is by deleting it by hand from each individual device that you have a Google account on. You have to go through it and delete it all by hand. That's the only way they let you do it. They don't make it easy, which is, of course, one of the standards of Google. Are you shocked? Remember now, you can't even proceed in setting up an Android cell phone account without giving Google the privilege of all of your data and all of your information. So you can't even have a cell phone without it if you have an Android phone. And they have 71% of the phones in the world, by the way, are Android phones. Advertising profile is something else they have. This is constructed from all the information they've gathered on you, including your location, gender, age, hobbies, interests, relationships, income, etc., etc. Next would be a profile of all the apps and extensions you use. Now, you're more liable to use extensions on a PC than on a tablet or on a phone, but you can use them on all three of those. And they know by that who you talk to, where in the world they are, even what time you go to sleep. They're figuring these things out. The next would be your YouTube history, and this is interesting. From here, they learn details about you, such as, are you a conservative? Are you a liberal? Are you a progressive? A Muslim? A Christian? Some other religion? An atheist? They find out whether you're anorexic, bulimic, depressed, or suicidal just by looking at your YouTube history. This is the kind of information they're gathering from every one of us online. So if you want to see it yourself, want to see your own Google file yourself, you can do that, and I show you how to do it in the documentary. Dylan Curran downloaded his. It was 5.5 gigabytes, and if you're not sure how big that is the size of 3 million average-sized Word documents, and it's about 10 times more information than Facebook keeps on any of us, including Mr. Curran, and he pointed that out. What else does Google keep? Well, it keeps your bookmarks when you bookmark a page that you want to remember how to get back to that website. All your emails, all your contacts in your contact list, your Google Drive files, your YouTube videos, your photos and videos taken on your phone, who you've done business with, and what products you've bought if you bought using Google. And there's more. They know your calendar. They know your Google Hangout sessions, which is like Skype, and they're now discontinuing that service, but they know all of those. Location history, the music you listen to, the books you've purchased, what Google groups you're in, websites you've created, the pages you've shared, assuming you have shared those with someone. And they even know, if you've got your phone in your pocket, how many steps a day you take. And you gave Google and Apple the rights to all of that data and all of that information when you signed up and you didn't read the fine print in the user agreement. Remember, we can't even proceed setting up a phone account unless we have signed off on giving them all of that. Google explicitly claims that they don't sell your private information, but they do sell the right to advertisers to be able to ping your phone because it has, or your tablet, it has a specific unique electronic marking, and they don't know your name necessarily, but they're able to do so because they've gotten that information through Google. So if you're like me, you probably say, but I have nothing to hide. And sometimes I'll hold my phone up and I'll say, here, just look through my phone. You're not going to find anything there that would be embarrassing to me or untoward and all. So, that's not the issue. The issue is that's my information. That is my data. And, I like the idea of privacy. The next generation coming up behind me doesn't understand why privacy is so important. My generation understood. The generations before us understood that privacy was something that a lot of people fought and died for, to give us the right to have our privacy. But what if somewhere in the future, the information that's now being harvested by Google and others is being stored and being used against us? What if in the future that's the way it works? That they're keeping this information, then they use that information against us. Now, I know that sounds like I'm talking about Big Brother, but after all, we are talking about Google, and that's what they are. All right, so no one should be under the illusion that Google wouldn't or doesn't already manipulate search engine results with their leftist political ideology and with their anti-religious bigotry. If you're willing to build a censored search engine for China, for the communist regime of China, and only stop because you got caught and some of your employees began to be very upset about it, what would stop them from constructing the algorithms for Google search to reflect their own company-wide bias for us right here in North America? Any notion that we can trust Google on any level is a pipe dream. How can anyone accurately respond to anything, both personally and politically, if we cannot obtain sufficient information to make informed decisions with? The ability to respond to almost anything in life is dependent on free and total access to all the data and facts available. If technocrats ideologically suppress information, then society will eventually be adversely affected. And Google's been doing this long enough that I can tell you that society has become affected by these things and by the things they have done. So let's look at the conclusion very quickly here. There are end times implications right now before the tribulation period, and our concerns are these three things: privacy, security, and our free speech. Those are three of the main points that I've tried to bring out in the documentary. What if the surveillance being carried out on the information we post becomes dangerous or even a deadly undoing to friends and loved ones after the rapture, after we're gone? That's a concern of mine. And think about who may have access to some or all of this electronically surveilled information I've been talking about. This goes right to the heart of a concern many of us have right now, today. So I'm going to cut to the chase and get right to the very end of my message for you. The Chinese communists have now over 500 million CCTV or closed-circuit TV cameras in use, watching every move of everyone living and working in China. In 2017, they claimed they could watch every person's actions, and if the need arises, they could backtrack a week or more to find out who that person had been with, where they'd been, and for how long. But everything I pointed out here and everything we put in the home invasion documentary is leading to one question. In the end, who will control all the data that's now being recorded? And I think most of you know the answer to this. The Antichrist will control every single bit of data that's now being recorded. And the fact is that Antichrist simply could not have come before the day that we're living in. And why is this, you ask? Because previously the man of sin could not have fulfilled what a key passage in the Bible states that he must be able to do when he comes. And what is that passage? And what could he do? And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Revelation chapter 13, verses 7 and 8 could never have been fulfilled until now. Verse 8 states, "And all that dwelt upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundations of the world." You notice the word all that I haven't read twice in that passage. Well, that's because all means all. And Antichrist could never have controlled the whole world until now. Now the technology is available for him to be able to do so. If we just look at China, that is a look at just the beginnings of what the Antichrist system will look like. So will today's technology become the key to world domination under Antichrist? I believe the question has been answered. The invasion is already underway. Antichrist system is being built right now all around us, and he'll simply walk in and take over. You don't want to be here in that hour. Jesus gave you a way out. He died for the sins of anyone who would come to him. Whosoever comes to him, it says. And that's what you need to do. If you don't know Jesus as Lord and Savior, put your trust in him. If you know someone that needs to be warned about what you've heard in this presentation, then you need to warn them. And we as Christians need to have a heart for evangelism. This is Eric Barger. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.